Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, people of all races, colors, and creeds, welcome back to the greatest show on earth, the Investigative Journal. I'm your host, Greg Anthony, and boy, do we have a lot to talk about today. A lot going on in the world, and I hope you appreciate my take on it and the angle that we take in this show, which is a little bit different than the mainstream media, whether it be the left or the right, a little bit different than the alternative media. And that's why some people used to call us the alternative to the alternative media. What did you just say, Greg? Some people used to call us? I'm the only... What the hell are you talking about? You're only you. Some people used to call me. Maybe I got 25 different personalities. Us. No. Some people used to call my show the alternative to the alternative media because we went just a little bit farther and talked about the Vatican-led New World Order, and that's the take we differ with from our friends on Fox News, from our friends on CNN, from our friends in GCN, all these alternative shows that don't even bother to really dig into this story and how it affects our everyday life. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How does it affect your everyday life, knowing that there's puppets behind the real people in power, and they're the ones that are the real people in power, and they're just pulling the strings of all of these crazy politicians. So we got a lot to talk about. Before I want to get into the truth about Valentine's Day, and I'll cover that in the second half hour. And let me just give you a little background. My show's been around a long, long time, and in fact, yesterday it really made me think about it, and I want to get to that in a minute, because I did a show about, of course, Vatican intrigue and Illuminati defectors. Vali speaks, and that was an interview I did way back in 2006. And she was a woman that claimed to be a member of the Illuminati, and Vali was a pseudonym for a woman who was about 45 years old at the time, and who was a mind programmer, she said, for the cult, and she left that in 1996. She was basically the sixth head trainer in San Diego and had 30 trainers working under her, and her story was incredible. So the first question I had was, is it real? And so I gave her kind of a 50-50 shot when I first did the interview, and then checked it out before and after, and there's a lot of good things that she said. When you do a story like that, you're not really sure, even after you do it, whether everything's legit, because you're dealing with things like satanic worshiping in the catacombs of the Vatican, things like that. So go back to that interview. And I may next week play it again. I only did about 45 minutes of the 2-hour interview. But it also made me think about all the things that have been going on in the last 14 years since I did that interview. And I started to think, where the hell was I 14 years ago? Can you remember exactly? It either had to be Idaho or Colorado. I've boiled it down to that. But anyway, it made me think about a lot of things. We were covering everything back then. I don't think there's a conspiracy story that the mainstream would say exists that I didn't try to tackle, because I came from a funny kind of a mindset when I left Italy. And when I left Italy, I had an idea that things weren't ripe in Denmark, so to speak. And I learned a lot about the Vatican's role in the world. And it's much different than what I got in catechism class when I went to high school and grade school at Notre Dame High School in Chicago and St. John Brebeuf Grade School. You can check it out. That's where I went. But anyway, started to think all these things we used to talk about back then. A few days ago, I did a show on chemtrails. That's the spraying of all these toxic metals in our atmosphere that's been going on at least since the 90s. And those are those white lines you see all over the place like a chalkboard in the sky. And there's nothing good about it. There's barium, and there's all these toxic metals that are being sprayed that have no good result for the environment. And it's also used, they say, for weather manipulation. And so we did a show that researched that a bit and went back to the 40s when the military was admitting that's exactly what they're doing. And we worked our way up to about 1965. So I think I'll pick that up maybe next week again, because it's Valentine's Day, right? And we got to talk about Valentine's Day. But anyway, and I dedicated the whole half hour for that, so don't worry. So I did this interview yesterday with this woman that I did in 2006, and it made me realize all the different things that we tried to get at: 9/11, vaccination liberation, you name it, Oklahoma City, all of the things that really didn't make much sense. And interviewing, of course, getting into the Vatican and interviewing different people. And a couple of these comments that I received on the YouTube. Now, let me explain. First Amendment Radio puts up the YouTube, okay? And I do the show. So that's the YouTube they put up for me. In the future, I think I might do my own as well. And also a couple of the radio stations have asked me to come on. So I'm going to expand. But I'm going to stay with First Amendment as well, because I've been with them ever since I got kicked off of these alternative stations back in 2011. I can't even remember, 4 or 5, and had no place to go. And they said, don't talk about the Vatican so much. Don't do it, Greg. And I refused. And so, sayonara, Charlie. And there I was, and the First Amendment Radio said, well, Greg, we'll let you talk. And they're a Christian station, and, they talk about this stuff. So I really appreciate it, and we'll stick with them. So anyway, a couple of these responses to my interview yesterday, or when was it, 2 days ago, were this. One man said, well, he calls himself Bugs Bunny, okay? He says, we're going way back here. So it could be a girl, I don't know. We're going way back here. In all honesty, I had my first epiphany, he says, pertaining to the Jesuits, when I read that article in the Spotlight called The Black Pope. Okay. I know the Spotlight was the precursor, I think, for the American Free Press, which I work for. Both of them are gatekeeper newspaper. We're gatekeeper newspapers. I learned that the hard way. I used to write 2 or 3 articles a week for them, and found out the hard way that who they really were. And let me tell you how they operate. They act like they're truth seekers, but they want to infiltrate to control the narrative. That's simple. And he said the most powerful man in the world, the Black Pope, he learned about that years ago. And right after that, I found a comic book called Alberto, and there was no logical reason for me to find these back to back. Yes, God works in mysterious ways. But anyway, Alberto Rivera, he's talking about, was a Jesuit priest who defected to the evil Jesuit order. He was a high-level Jesuit from the Vatican. Yes, and he defected. And basically, what he was doing was telling America how he was responsible, one of many of these shysters in the Jesuit order, who was responsible for infiltrating Protestant churches. Yes, to infiltrate and then to make the doctrine kind of change. We don't want to talk about the Vatican being the Antichrist, and we're going to make it the Jesuit doctrine. And we all know there's a couple Jesuit ideas that have popped up starting back in the 1600s regarding who was the Antichrist. And they had to get rid of that idea that it was the Vatican. So anyway, he read about Alberto. Well, you know something? I've interviewed Alberto Rivera's widow, Nuri Rivera, who still runs, I believe, as of 3 or 4 years ago, a small Christian ministry in Florida. And she gave me some great insights, said without question, 100%, the Jesuits killed him. And go back to some of my old shows to talk about all the details. Well, I first ran into him when did you know he first spoke in America, I believe it was in the 80s, at Pastor Tony Alamo's ministry. And you know, if you go back and read Tony Alamo, you're going to get some crazy stories on both sides. You're going to hear from the mainstream that it was a cult, that Tony was a pervert. I, on the other hand, interviewed countless number of people from his ministry and found the opposite to be the truth. They persecuted those people tremendously, and I did many, many stories about it. So go back to that, make up your own mind. Now, he said, there's no logical reason, he said, for me to see these two stories about the Black Pope and Alberto at the same time. I thought that someone was trying to tell me something. Yes, they were. That the Jesuits and the Vatican are behind all this garbage that goes on. That's what they were trying to tell you. And anyway, he said that he had a sneaking suspicion that someone was pulling the strings behind the curtain of the puppet show. Oh, it is a puppet show, all right. And let me tell you something. It is so much of a puppet show that it's become like fun and theater for me, because if you take the angle we do on this show, and that is that both the conservative left, the hierarchy, and the conservative right, the conservative right and the liberal left, the hierarchies of both, actually fight hand in glove, as you can see every day on the news today, every day, but actually working for the same goal, because they have to play this, and I say it many times, the Hegelian dialectic to get their way. So when you realize that, you kind of realize that it's all theater, all orchestrated. And let me tell you how it's orchestrated. You all know about Georgetown University, don't you? Well, you ought to if you don't. And it's right near the White House. And underneath there's a tunnel that goes to the White House. And in the middle of that tunnel is a big round room. And the people from the White House, like the president, like Trump, late at night, after he has his milk and cookies with a little bit of cognac in it. He says he doesn't drink, but maybe he puts a little cognac in the milk. Who can tell? I wouldn't, feel any worse about him if he did that. But anyway, he trots over there in his robe and he meets a couple of Jesuits, and they tell him, today, sir, this is what you're going to say, and this is your script. And so you just keep following the script, and we'll keep working on the agitation. We'll keep making sure that the Antifa group fights the MAGA people and that we have all this controversy. Don't worry, we will create chaos on the outside. You just do your part on the inside. As a good actor would do, Mr. Trump has taken his script and trots out for the next day, and he steps on the stage. Yes, the stage. The stage. The whole thing is orchestrated. When you start figuring that out, you start to have fun with it. You don't really get upset anymore. You say, you know something? At least I understand what the hell they're trying to do and why the world is going to hell in a handbasket. So anyway, they get their scripts. So what are we? We're nothing but extras. And it's interesting. That brings me to the Oscars that just occurred. And remember, if you saw Brad Pitt, he won the Best Supporting Actor. He gave a little speech. And it was one of the only political ones that they gave. And he didn't say much. He said, you know something, they give me 45 seconds to speak, but that's more than the Senate gave John Bolton. And if you've been following that crazy impeachment, you know what that's all about. The Senate said, no more witnesses. You guys in the House didn't give Trump due process. You could have called all these witnesses, and you rushed this phony impeachment to us, and you expect us to do your work? No way. So anyway, that's what Brad Pitt thinks. He thinks the Senate should do the House's work because he doesn't support Trump. Okay? But he didn't get the facts right. But anyway, that's okay. In this case, Brad, me and you are simply extras on this big theater set. We're finally equal, right? You're not a Hollywood star on this set, on this stage. You're just an extra like me. And boy, I'll tell you, you played your part quite well. All right? Now let me play mine. And the real bad thing about it is none of us get any money for this. If you work in Hollywood, at least you'd get $100 a day. Well, you don't need the money. You're making millions starring in these Hollywood movies, but at least you could come out and help us, help all the other Americans who are also playing extras in this big theatrical political stage, this orchestrated event put on by the producers and the directors, the Vatican Jesuit-led New World Order. They should have, every day before the news goes up, they should really have their credits put up. Producers, director, producer, the Black Pope, director, Pope, whatever his name is, Francine. Pope Francine is the director of this episode of the greatest political show on earth, because the whole goddamn thing is staged. And excuse my French. But anyway, it gets me a little upset when I think about it. But really, I've learned to enjoy it. And I think once you get to this point where you know how they work, how this is operating, with that tunnel between the White House and the Vatican, and the Georgetown. And I've done other episodes that go on down there. They go one day at a time. And I must say, this time they selected the most entertaining president, even though many find him belligerent and find him a bully. But boy, doesn't he draw the crowds. I mean, who else can go to a political event and get 100,000 people wanting to go? So they picked the right guy. He's a crowd pleaser anyway. And I'll tell you what, they're going to be hard-pressed to find another president and select another one that's as entertaining as this guy. And who do they got in the Democratic side? My God. I mean, it's really a cast of who's going to be the loser this year. Now, knowing they select these guys, I can't tell you what their real plan is at the end in November. It could either go Trump or whoever's going to oppose him. If they get in, it's going to be a socialist movement. Or it's going to be Trump for another 4 years pushing the American agenda till he's out of office, and then they'll push in socialism, and Bernie Sanders, heir apparent if he's too old by then. AOC will have 4 more years of socialist propaganda to tell you from her mentors, the Jesuits, who created socialism, by the way, in the 1600s. Yes. So why don't they ever get credit for this stuff? Nobody wants to talk about them. And I think that's the story in itself. That's where you got to look. Because you can have fun with... Listen, right after the show, I'm going to go listen to some news on CNN and laugh along with them and laugh along with the Republicans on Fox and have some fun with it. I mean, how else can you survive in this world? But anyway, Brad Pitt, do me a favor. At least stand up for all us other extras who need $100 a day. You obviously don't. And maybe let me know if you really understand this story. Maybe somebody send this to him. One of my listeners, send it to him and see if he'll respond. But they usually don't want to talk about this stuff because they know if this comes out in the public or they tweet something or somebody, they won't even talk because they know they'll lose their jobs. He won't be making $1 million a year, a day, or whatever he makes for making. It's probably a day. And that brings me to this Democrat, Mike Bloomberg. Trump called him, Mini Mike, 5'4", lack of energy type. Well, Bloomberg's a billionaire. This guy's got $56 billion in his wallet, and he's spending $1 million a day on Facebook to buy the presidency. Well, they've selected him. But that's, what they're doing? They're shoving it in your face. So this idea that anybody can be a president in America is absolutely crazy. You either got to be a communist that the Jesuits back, like Bernie. You got to be a gay man like Buttigieg, because they want to have the first gay man. Who's going to be the first lady? I mean, is that going to be embarrassing or what? I don't know about you, but I guess in the society we live in, if anybody said anything, boy, they'd be put in the gulag. But anyway, there you go. You can be president if you're gay now. You can be president if you have $1 billion like Bloomberg. Or you can be president if you're one of those and then have to be selected by the High Jesuit Command. Then you can be president. So this idea that anybody born in America can be president, forget about it. Think about this. Check out all your presidents. Many of them, and I don't know how, I think it's more than half, come from the bloodline of Charlemagne. The rest have elite bloodlines. I mean, they go to the kings back in England. And in fact, there was somebody who did a really nice genealogy study of Hillary Clinton's family and Donald Trump's family, and they're long-lost cousins, from the same family way back when, I don't know, 15th cousins or whatever. But anyway, they're related. And, the saga of America goes on. I'd love to see what it's going to be like in 50 years. Give me your ideas. Maybe Email me. Put a comment on the YouTube that you'll see. But anyway, here we go. So I was giving you some of these comments. In the last 2 minutes, let me give you another one. And he says, don't let this detract from the Zvali interview because it still needs to be said. But Zvali was just a confirmation on the suspicions that this gentleman had, let alone his own facts and evidence in his personal life. And apparently he goes on to support what I say here, and that we have to look into the Vatican-led New World Order. Then another person put a message here and said, still have your parrot, Greg? And I said, no, I don't. And he says, LOL. To the bad people who stole your website, yes, they did. They stole Arctic Beacon, and I used to love that website. But, I tried to recap as much information as I could. And he said, wow, I've been listening to you for over a decade. Boy, how time flies. So it takes me back to the beginning of the show, and that is, where the hell have we been? What have we been doing for all these years? How much progress have we really made? And I think more than most people think, because it isn't so much have we, along with many others, gotten rid of chemtrails? No. Have we, along with many others, broke the barrier with 9/11 so that most people that turn on Fox and CNN know they're lying? No. Have we even figured out who killed, and got people to really understand who killed Lincoln, who killed Kennedy, who killed Martin Luther, who killed all these other 5 presidents? Well, a small group, but we haven't broken that threshold where the masses would say, yes, right on, and millions would listen. No, we haven't. But what we have done is there are a number of people that understand what we do here. And we understand that it isn't all, for naught. Although it seems that way sometimes, because if you look at the world, it seems, from our perspective, it seems to get worse all the time. Chemtrails is worse. The pedophile rings, we've covered that many, many times. That's worse. We covered the Vatican and all their perverts, and there's always more. But the real key is that we get more people, as many people, to understand as we can. And those that do have a better chance of really not only understanding who are the puppet masters here, but also kind of enjoying it from a theatrical point of view, as if you were an extra on this real interesting stage that they've placed, because it's not reality here. This is their fantasies. And we'll talk about that another day. But let's get to the next half hour, and I want to talk about the truth behind St. Valentine's Day. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app, for all of your mobile devices. Streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn, the Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, back for the second half hour of the Investigative Journal. Greg Anthony here, and before I get to the story, the truth behind St. Valentine's Day, yes, before I get to that, and it's supposedly the holiday of love, correct? Let me say this, I finally got a paid advertiser, and I have to read this advertisement from the United States Army. Now, why would the United States Army advertise on my show? Well, they think that my idea of the new branch of the military is a good one. So they're starting it, maybe. So here is the ad. America, we've been a warring nation most of our existence. In fact, in all but 20 years of America's lifespan, we've been at war. But for far too long, we have killed off hundreds of thousands, even millions of our young men and women. Yes, we've killed them off just at the budding of their life. We've cut off dreams, hopes, and many ideas that maybe would have changed the world. We've left families, parents, grieving for their children. But we have a new idea. We are proposing to start the Senior Citizen Army. Yes, no longer will we need to put boots on the ground. We have robots for that. No longer will we need to kill our youth. What we need to do now is make our senior citizens worthy of the task. So, if you're 55 years or older and still have a good heart, and can run a mile in at least 1 day, and can run the 100 in at least 60 seconds, and can do at least one push-up, can do at least one sit-up, can do at least one whatever. You may be eligible to join our new senior citizen army. And the real motto is, why kill off the youth when we can kill off our seniors that we hate anyway? I added that. They're going to pull the ad now. But they didn't say that. But anyway, what they want to do, and I'll read the end of it. We want you. Uncle Sam wants you, if you're 55 years or older, for the Senior Citizen Army, the United States Army. This is a message from the United States Army. All right. Finally got a paid ad. And who thought that idea would ever catch on? I guess they really don't need boots on the ground anymore. You know, they got all these weapons now. They don't, microwave weapons and all these things. What do they, they don't have to kill youngsters. When the senior citizens now can just sit behind the desk, press a button, and boom, there goes Baghdad. Okay. So, anyway, at least I got one paid advertiser. Maybe I'll get more off of this. I got better ideas, than that. Okay. I just got an email. They said, thank you for the ad. However, could you please not say we want to kill off seniors? Okay, fine. I won't. And then they say, we also would like you to do an ad, and we'll pay you well for it, for the Space Force. Oh, this ought to be good. And I'll write back and see if we can get that ad so I can keep the show going. But anyway, back to what we wanted to talk about. The truth about St. Valentine's Day. Now, let me give you a little history on this. I used to do shows years ago about every one of these pagan holidays. And in the beginning, I was very negative. And I said, you either got to, are you going to worship, go to Christmas and worship these pagan holidays, boycott these holidays. I didn't say boycott, but I was pretty adamant about why should you even worship, celebrate these holidays. And then after I used to get a lot of comments about, well, Greg, it's too hard. Okay, we understand this, but, we'd like to have some fun with our family. So I said, okay. And I felt the same way. So knowing that they were all pagan holidays, I still told people every year about them, or every time Easter came up, every time Christmas, Halloween, etc. But I said, you know what? It's okay to celebrate them, but understand what you're doing. In a sense, celebrate your family. Be with them. There's a way you can do this, without basically offending God, I think. I think if you do it the right way, if you understand, God said understand things. So if you understand it, it's better. But don't be certain about anything I say here. Don't assume anything, please. Do not even take what I say here word for word. Go to the history books and dig a little deeper. And then go to your Bible. Read about that too. It's good. First I got into the Bible only because of a historical thing, because I grew up as a Catholic and never read the Bible for many, many years. In fact, I didn't even read the catechism. I remember I used to be in Father Mulcahy's catechism class at Notre Dame High School, and I used to sit in the front row right by the door. It was an 8 o'clock class or something, and I'd fall asleep. And Father Mulcahy was a great guy. I loved him. He was a great guy. Tapped me on the shoulder, and he didn't hit me over the head with a ring or something like that, which they did back then. And you know what? I got hit once in a history class with one of their Notre Dame rings right on the top of my head, a little bump. Went home and told my dad about it, and he said, good. Next time I hope they hit you over the head with a sledgehammer because I want you to pay attention in class. That's the way it was back then. Now, if I said that, my dad, if you said that, there'd be a lawsuit filed, and I'd be a millionaire. But anyway, so these holidays, like Christmas, Easter, and all the time like that, really don't take for what I say here for as the truth. Read it yourself. But I'd like to enlighten you, since tomorrow is Valentine's Day, and if you don't want to celebrate it, it's a good way to get out of buying candy and kisses and stuff for your girlfriend. Just tell her that it's a pagan holiday and we shouldn't celebrate it, and get out of it that way. I did that once in a while in the beginning. You got to have somebody on the other, your girlfriend's got to understand this too. Maybe you can get away with it. Say, listen, I've decided this year, honey, I'm not buying you candy, or I'm not saying Happy Valentine's Day because it's a pagan holiday. And you want to know why? And she's going to look at you like, oh, yeah, you just don't want to buy anything. You don't love me. But anyway, Valentine's Day in the past. So the real truth behind it, I did mention the Bible. Yeah, I got into the Bible finally for historical purposes and then started reading it. So that's how I first got into it. Then what I wanted to say was the real truth behind Valentine's Day and what you might want to know about it, And so I researched it again, found some articles on the internet because I've forgotten a lot of what I did in the past, so I had to refresh my memory as well. I didn't do this last year. I think I did it the year before. But, like Christmas, Easter, Halloween, New Year's, and other holidays of this world, says the rcg.org church, St. Valentine's Day is another attempt to whitewash perverted customs and observances of pagan gods and idols by Christianizing them. Well, I say this. They got a point, because I've always said that the reason they tell us that we revolve around the sun and we're traveling 93 miles an hour and the sun is this huge object billions of miles away is because they're sun worshipers. The little sun that comes around us would not be the same as it really is, right? So go take that one, NASA. But anyway, so it's another attempt, they say, to Christianize these pagan holidays. And really, they laugh at you. The people that are these Luciferians that are doing this are laughing at us. But they're not laughing at, I'm laughing back at you because I know what you guys are up to. Take that. As innocent and harmless as this St. Valentine's Day may appear, its traditions and customs originate from two of the most sexually perverted pagan festivals of ancient history. Oh boy. You know what? The perverts in the Vatican and all these other perverts in Hollywood and stuff like Jeffrey Epstein and Harvey Weinstein, they love this holiday, It's one of the perverted pagan festivals of ancient history. And it's called Lupercalia. Okay? That's what it's Lupercalia. And the feast day of Juno Fueborata. So that's a good one. All right? So these are ancient little festivals that they had morphed into this Saint Valentine, who was supposedly this great guy of love, I guess. But anyway, let's look at it a little closely here, or more closely. Anyway, we're talking about this Luper, and I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Maybe not, but you'll get the gist. It's Lupercalia, and it's celebrated on February 15th. Well, we do it on the 14th, okay? Known as the Festival of Sexual License, and was held by the ancient Romans in honor of Lupercus, god of fertility and husbandry, protector of herds and crops, and a mighty hunter, especially of wolves. The Romans believed that Lupercus would protect Rome from roving bands of wolves, which devoured livestock and people. Maybe we should hope that this will protect us from these roving band of wolves in the Vatican Jesuit order and all of these politicians that work for him from destroying us. That would be my wish. Yeah, so we have, and this basically, this is interesting. This is what St. Valentine's Day was like in the early days. It's assisted by Vestal virgins. The male priests conducted purification rites of sacrificing goats and a dog. Oh my goodness. Where are the animal rights people here? And I bet you they don't bring this up. So why, listen, if I was in the animal rights group, I would not worship Valentine's Day because they were killing dogs and animals, sacrificing them. And what are you doing, all you animal rights people? You're out there buying candy, worshiping St. Valentine's Day. What hypocrites? Can they be hypocrites if they don't know? Well, they should know. Give them this show, for Christ's sake. But anyway, where the Romans, they're sacrificing these goats and dogs. in the Lupercal Cave on Palatine Hill, where the Romans believed the twins, Romulus and Remus, had been sheltered and nursed by she-wolves before they eventually founded Rome. You know, these guys had imaginations back then. Where are our new imaginations for pagan holiday? They're using the old ones. Can't they think of anything new? And by the way, it said a cave. You check it out. The Virgin Mary and all of this stuff is always in a cave. And that tells you a little bit about how ridiculous the worshiping of the Virgin Mary is. And it's not biblical. So clothed in loincloths, made from sacrificed goats and smeared in their blood. Oh, that's a great holiday, right? Here, honey, why don't you give her this for Valentine's Day, a smeared goat. Or get her one of those goat hides with blood all over it and say, Happy Valentine's Day, honey. So they used to smear the sacrificed goats with blood, and the Luperci would run about Rome, striking women with febrois, thongs made from skins of the sacrificed goats. The Luperci believed that the floggings, oh wow, purified women and guaranteed their fertility and ease of childbirth. Now get that. All you women's all you women's liberals out there, feminists. Why would you want anything on Valentine's Day? I'm going to give you a thong and made from these skins of sacrificed goats so that you'll be able to easily give childbirth. And that's your gift on Valentine's Day. Oh boy. To the Romans, February. Now, February, folks, has never been one of my... I hate February. First of all, it's hard to pronounce. February or February. I don't know why they don't just say February and get the R out of there. Secondly, I never know how many days. I'm still thinking today. Is it 27, 28? I don't know. Is it leap year? Who the hell knows? This month bugs me. It's short. You can't say it. It's a pagan month where they're beating women with goat skins. I mean, come on. On February 14th, billets, small pieces of paper, each of which had the name of a teenage girl written on it, were put in the container. This is back then in Rome. Teenage boys would then choose one billet at a random. The boy and girl whose name was drawn would become a couple, joining in erotic games at the feasts and parties celebrated throughout Rome. Isn't that child? That is basically perverted. Children running around doing these perverted things. They're teenagers. This is what we're celebrating. Oh, I'm crying here. What are we going to do? We've entrusted our world to these people who created these holidays. Can you imagine? We're trying to fight, child sex trafficking. Really, the people that really are truthful. And all these pedophile rings. The Vatican, you got millions of priests. I mean, it's ridiculous. I was reading the other day, this perverted priest. Where did they send him instead of jail? They send him to Gonzaga University, to be rehabilitated. Well, teenage boys they choose these girls, and then they run around Rome doing all these perverted things. Kids. After the festival, they would remain sexual partners for the rest of the year. This custom was observed in the Roman Empire for centuries. Do we ever hear about that? I'm telling you, this is what we have to live on. Nobody cares about this stuff. I mean, why would we even want? Can't we think of, look, I'm all for a day of love. Have a day where you really, but why does it have to be on Valentine's Day when this is the history of it? It's perversion supreme. In AD 495, Pope Gelasius renamed the festival Juno Febbrato, quote, a pope, as the feast of the purification of the Virgin Mary. Here we go. The date of its observance was later changed from February 14th to February 2nd, then changed back to February 14th. It is also known as Candlemas, the presentation of the Lord, the purification of the Blessed Virgin, and the feast of the presentation of Christ in the temple. Why would this idiot pope ever mix these two things together? Christ, Virgin Mary. I mean, the Virgin Mary, the worship of that is not right. I mean, just not correct. And all these stupid Medjugorje, Fatima, these Virgin Mary, they say she comes down and sits in a tree, and all these kids see her. And then they kill the kids. It's all fiction. But these popes love to mix this pagan stuff with what really is, could be a great holiday. Love and all that stuff is good. It's good for candy stores, flower shops, all that stuff, but I do not like where it comes from. Now, after Constantine had made the Roman Church brand of Christianity the official religion of Roman Empire, church leaders wanted to do away with the pagan festivals of the people. Lupercalia was high on their list, but the Roman citizens thought otherwise. Okay. And it was not really until 496 that the Church at Rome was able to do anything about Lupercalia. Powerless to get rid of it, Pope Gelasius instead changed it from February 15th to 14th and called it St. Valentine's Day. It was named after one of that church's saints, who in 270 AD was executed by the emperor for his beliefs. Okay, I can go with this. And where does it go from here? Where does it go? According to the Catholic, oh boy, here we go. I love going to the Catholic Encyclopedia because you don't know what you're going to find there. At least 3 different St. Valentines, they say, all of them martyrs, are mentioned in the early martyrologies under the date of February 14th. One is described as a priest at Rome, another as a bishop, and these two seem both to have suffered in the second half of the 3rd century and to have been buried in the Flammian Way, but at different distances from the city. Of the 3rd St. Valentine, who suffered in Africa with a number of companions, nothing is further known. Several biographies of different men named Valentine were merged into one official St. Valentine. The church whitewashed Lupercalia even further. Instead of putting the names of the girls into a box, the names of saints were drawn by both girls and boys. It was then each person's duty to emulate the life of the saint whose name or he or she had drawn. This was Rome's vain attempt to whitewash a pagan observance by Christianizing it, which God has not given man the power and the authority to do in the first place. But Rome has traditions. So anyway, my idea here is they were mixing paganism with Christianity. It's all screwed up even today. And all they had to do was just denounce this and start anew. If they want another holiday, you can start, well, you know what, have a day of love. Do it in a purely honest manner without having to be involved with this paganism. But then again, Rome is built on a pagan mountain. It's all of their traditions are pagan. And when you grow up believing them and then having to understand what the hell they were trying to brainwash you with, it's tough. You can get over it. You can get over it if you really do your research. But it's not easy because your whole belief systems have to change, which I had to go through. Now, this was Rome's, they're trying to paganize whatever they were doing. But over the century, St. Valentine Day cards became popular, especially by the late 18th century and early 19th century. These cards were painted with pictures of Cupid and hearts and meticulously decorated with lace, silk, and flowers. Just divorce yourself of the whole thing. Have another day. February's a lost month anyway. Change it. Why can't we do it? Because we are controlled by Luciferians. Get that into your head. Anyway, 2 minutes left on the show. And it goes a little deeper here. Who was the original Valentine? What does the name Valentine mean? Valentine comes from the Latin valentius, which derives from valens, to be strong, powerful, mighty. The Bible describes a man with the similar title. And Cush begot Nimrod. He began to be the mighty one in the earth. He was the mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord, he was said to have hunted with bow and arrow. As mentioned, the Romans celebrated Lupercalia to honor the hunter god Lupercus. To the Greeks, from whom the Romans had copied most of their mythology, Lupercus was known as Pan, the god of light. You've heard of Pan. The Phoenicians worshipped the same deity as Baal, the sun god. Baal was one of the many names and titles for Nimrod, a mighty hunter, especially of wolves. He was also the founder of the first Lord of Babel. So this is a whole pagan heritage here we have. And it's been mixed in with the help of these people, Luciferians, who still are in control at the Vatican and control of our world. And they love to mix these pagan holidays together. So to end, what I want to say is, for those of you who want an out and don't want to celebrate St. Valentine's Day, read this story to your girlfriend or wife. For those of you who want to celebrate Valentine's Day, understand this stuff, and maybe you can enjoy the day anyway. And so I'm not trying to rain on your parade. I'm just trying to say, think about this when you come up with all these. Think about Easter, what that's about, Christmas, Halloween. These things come from really, really perverted things. We're sun-worshipping things, and they should not be the days we worship or celebrate in a Christian country. I just think of that. If you grew up and they didn't do it, what kind of world would it be? We just grew up because we listen to everybody, right? We listen and we follow. We go to Christmas celebrations. We all do it. But these are where they come from. But nobody wants to talk about it. It's kind of like something you don't want to talk about over a Valentine Day gift, right? Well, anyway, hope you understand and enjoyed that. Check it out yourself. And I'll be back tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.